All right. Good afternoon, parents and families. Welcome to the MTSS breakout session for the Big Idea Conference. My name is Brittany Roll. I am Program Specialist for MTSS. And we have Jennifer McSparron, who's with us today, is our Senior Administrator, K-12, MTSS, and Interventions. All right. Next, we're right. Okay. All right, going over the learning environment, the expectations and commitment. Enable your microphone so that you're able to build communities. We will be giving you opportunities throughout today's session to engage and collaborate and answer any questions. And then for our commitments today, it's to be present. Let's have fun and make someone's day. All right, so as far as our virtual etiquette, again, we will provide opportunities for you to ask questions today. You can ask questions by typing in the chat box. You can also unmute to share during the question time. If you have any questions during the session, please raise your hand. We will give you an opportunity to provide feedback, and you won't have any polls for this session, so you don't need to worry about that. But again, welcome. We are so happy to be here with you today, and we look forward to engaging.
All right. Okay, I believe I am back. I apologize, everyone. I did have some technical issues in the beginning where my computer was freezing, but I am back. I'm Jennifer McSparron, Senior Administrator for K-12 MTSS and Interventions. Brittany did a great job introducing and getting you started today. Before we get into our content, we just want you to type in the chat, why did you choose this session today? So what brought you to this session about MTSS? If you could just type those answers in the chat, we'll give you about 1 minute to do so.
And just a friendly reminder, guys, today's session is being recorded. So please ensure that the information that you are typing in the chat and any information that you are sharing is not specific to a school or to individual students. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for those of you who responded into the chat. We're going to move on today and review today's agenda. We started with introductions, our purpose for today, as well as our warm-up. We're going to be moving into what is MTSS and the MTSS Framework. So we're going to discuss a little bit about what exactly MTSS means and what it stands for. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the problem-solving process. After that, we're going to talk about myths and truths as it relates to MTSS. And then finally, we'll go into some resources and our closing slides, as well as time for questions and answers that you might have about today's content. So now that we've shared today's purpose and the goal of today's session, we're going to talk a little bit about MTSS and the content for today. MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered System of Supports. The triangle on the right here is the image that the state of Florida, as well as OCPS uses to represent the MTSS framework. It is an evidence-based model that integrates data and problem solving with instruction and intervention. So students are provided varying levels of instruction and intervention that meet their specific and individual needs. So instruction is tailored to what students need. The goal is to intervene early if we see that students are struggling in a certain academic area so that all students are successful. And then every student is part of the MTSS framework. It's how we do school. So it doesn't matter what support the students are receiving. Everyone is part of the framework.
All right, these are the 6 components of the MTSS framework. Multiple tiers of instruction and intervention, the problem solving process, data evaluation, communication and collaboration, capacity building infrastructure, and leadership. And as you can see, the heart of the framework is the shared responsibility between the school and the district. So MTSS is not a one person job. It's not something that we do in silo. It's something that really encompasses all stakeholders, including yourselves as parents. Overall, it really is, as Jen said, how we do school. It is a system of components that ensure that we are providing optimum supports to students on our campus. So tier 1 is what we call core instruction. This instruction is provided to all students. So as you can see, looking down at the triangle there, tier 1 is for all students. Again, it is the instructional supports, it's the curriculum instruction, the grade level curriculum instruction that's provided to all students. Standards-based curriculum, or we have benchmarks-based curriculum for ELA and math, and then standards-based curriculum for our social studies and science. And that is the grade level standards that are provided to students during tier 1 core instruction. So if you're an elementary parent, that looks like your child's English language arts class or your child's math class. And if you're a secondary parent, same thing, their math class, it may be algebra, 8th grade, 7th grade math, 6th grade, 7th grade English. And within tier 1, we differentiate instruction and we also scaffold instruction. And differentiation is really tailoring that core curriculum, core instruction to meet students' needs. And scaffolding is when we really add instructional supports or shift our instructional approach. Teachers shift their instructional approaches to ensure that students are attaining that grade level content. And tier 2 instruction occurs in addition to tier 1. So as you can see, the first bottom of the triangle is for all students, but tier 2 instruction is for some students, and it occurs in addition to tier 1. It is explicit, targeted instruction that occurs usually in a small group setting. Students are grouped by targeted skills. Specific instruction is used to close those foundational gaps that students may be experiencing that's not allowing for them to be successful with that tier 1 instruction that's provided to all students. Students are monitored, every 2 to 4 weeks. It varies depending on, the instructional approach and or the level of skill or deficit that the student may have. The progress monitoring focus should match the skills targeted to the intervention. So again, how we ensure that we are meeting students' needs and that we are teaching and providing the instruction to students with tier 2 instruction. We want to make sure it matches their need, and we give a progress monitoring assessment to ensure that what we are doing as teachers to support students in their time of need is successful. And Jen's going to talk to you a little bit more about that when we discuss the problem solving process.
All right, and then beyond tier 2, we also have tier 3. And tier 3 is really in addition to tier 1 and tier 2. So it layers supports for students that need additional support and resources outside of tier 1 and tier 2. The difference between tier 2 and tier 3 is that the intensity of the intervention or instruction is increased. So that means that something about the intervention, the intensity, the amount of support provided is increased. For example, the group size might decrease. So the student in tier 2 or your child might be receiving support in tier 2 and a group of 5 or 6 students. And then when they need tier 3 supports, that group size is reduced maybe down to 3. That's just an example. Another example might be for the period of time that the intervention is being given. For example, a student in tier 2 might be receiving additional intervention and instruction for 15 minutes 4 days a week, where when they move to tier 3, maybe the student needs additional time, so they're getting 30 minutes 4 days a week of instruction. And another way that the intensity can be increased is by making the instruction and intervention more focused. So, really looking at more specific skills that that student needs in order to progress. So, we can and make the actual instruction more intense. So in OCPS, this intervention structure is done in specific classes. In the elementary school, so kindergarten through fifth grade, we have something called an FBS block, Foundational Basic Skills block for reading. And this is where additional instruction and intervention for tier two and tier three are provided. And then we also have math intervention periods within the elementary school day for that additional support in math. At the secondary level, in grades 6 through 10, this occurs in our intensive reading classes as well as our foundational mathematic classes. So, those students who need additional support in specific areas that are targeted might be placed in one of these classes. If you have any questions about what may be available at your child's school, contact your child's school site.
All right, thank you, Jen. So now we're going to apply some of the learning that was just shared with us. So the first step is to think about the information you just learned about the MTSS framework. And then, upon thinking about that, please respond in the chat or please feel free to unmute and share what is one area of new learning for you. So again, just considering everything that we have shared with you thus far, Jen and myself, what is one area of new learning for you? And then when you're ready, please feel free to type your response in the chat and press send. And if you would like to unmute to share, please feel free to do so. So at this time, we're going to give you a couple of minutes to type your responses in the chat and or give time for participants to unmute and share. All right, thank you for those of you who were participating. We appreciate that. At this time, we're going to provide an opportunity for you to ask any questions on the content that was shared thus far. So again, what questions do you have about the content shared thus far? Again, please feel free to unmute to share, or you may post your questions in the chat. All right, thank you for sharing.
All right, now we're going to talk a little bit more about the four-step problem-solving process. Now, this problem-solving process is one of the 6 components of the MTSS framework. So it's important to remember that the four-step problem-solving process isn't MTS by itself. It's one component of 6 within MTSS. As I said earlier, the image on the left is the MTSS triangle and the visual that the state and OCPS uses to show the MTSS framework. The problem solving process is embedded within this triangle, just like it's embedded in the MTSS framework, which I mentioned earlier. The problem solving process is the circular image within that triangle with the blue arrows. On the right-hand side of the screen, that problem-solving process is also depicted, and this gives a little bit more explanation of each step of that problem-solving process, and I'm going to review that with you now. So step 1 in the problem-solving process is goal identification, or what we want the students to know or be able to do. And so what we call this is our standards-based curriculum. So each grade level, we have the best standards and we have what students should learn at each grade level. And so that's the basis of what we want students to know and be able to do. So if you have a first grade student, we look at what the first grade standards are and we see if the students are achieving those standards or not. And if they are, we continue with the supports and the instruction that is happening. If there is a gap in that achievement, so if the students are not meeting those grade level expectations and standards, we go to step 2, which is problem analysis. That's why is this problem occurring? Why is there a gap between what a student is expected to know and what they have learned so far? And what we do here is we look at the instruction and the intervention that we are providing the students. So we start with the student's environment, the actual instruction, and what needs to be changed in order for them to make to close that gap in their learning. So we look at what we need to change at the school level in order to close that gap in learning. And how we do that is step 3, the instructional and intervention design. That's what we're going to do. So we come together as a team and we put together a plan as to how we're going to close that gap. And we design instruction or intervention that will help us close that gap. And then what we do in step 4 is called response to intervention or instruction. And I want to point out that this is one step in the problem solving process. In the past, you might have heard RTI and MTS used interchangeably. And really, RTI or response to intervention is one step in this problem solving process. And this is where we look at, is what we're doing working? So the plan that we put in place and the instruction and intervention that we planned, is it working? And if it is, we're going to continue to do what we're doing and close that achievement gap. If it's not working, we're going to continue this process. You notice how it's a circular process until we find the right instruction and intervention to meet your child's needs. So this process is fluid and it runs in continuous cycles, as I had just said. And we analyze and we look at data to guide our instructional decisions and actions in order to improve educational outcomes. Now, as a parent of a child, and if you're involved in the problem solving process, you might be invited to attend a meeting. So, what you might hear from your child's school is that you're being invited to a problem solving team meeting, a problem solving meeting, an MTSS meeting. So you might hear it said in a few different ways, but they're talking about the 4-step problem solving process. And you, as a parent, you are so vital in this process to provide information as a stakeholder into the instruction and intervention that your child is going to receive. And then communication regarding your child's progress on this plan will be communicated via phone, email, or through a letter sent home or in a conference that you have with the school.
All right, Jen, thank you so much for sharing such great information. Now we're going to give you a time to collaborate and share your learning today by playing a little round of myths and truths. So essentially, we will read a statement to you, and the 5 statements are presented on your screen. And after we read each statement, you will be given the opportunity to respond in the chat by typing an M for myth, or you can type the word myth, or typing the word truth if the statement is true, or typing a T for truth. All right, so let's get started. Statement number 1, or question number 1, the MTSS framework and the problem solving process are 2 terms that represent the MTSS process. Okay, so again, you can respond in the chat by typing M or myth for if the statement is a myth, or you can respond in the chat by typing T or the word truth if the statement is truth. And we are going to give you a couple of seconds of think time here. All right, and if you responded in the chat with myth, you are correct. So remember, as Jen told us and as we discussed, the problem solving process is one of the 6 components of the MTSS framework. And MTSS is not a process. It is a framework of structured evidence-based supports that are there to support your students. And as Jen mentioned, that problem solving process is where you all are a vital part in those problem solving team meetings. So thank you for those of you who responded with myth. All right, question number 2, the 6 components of the MTSS framework and the 4 steps of the problem solving process. So are there 6 components of the MTSS framework and 4 steps to the problem solving process? If that statement is truth, please respond in the chat by typing truth or T. If it is a myth, please respond in the chat by typing an M or the word myth. All right, and if you responded in the chat by typing a T, truth, you are absolutely correct. There are six components of the MTSS framework, and there are 4 steps of the problem-solving process. Moving on to statement number 3, implementation of the MTSS framework is a shared responsibility among all stakeholders. So again, if that statement is true, please respond in the chat by typing a T or the word truth. And if it's a myth, please respond in the chat by typing an M or the word myth. I'm just giving you a couple of seconds of think time. All right, and if you responded with truth, you are correct. Absolutely, implementation is a shared responsibility amongst all stakeholders, and as Jen mentioned, you are a part of that. We are. Your school-based teams, problem-solving teams will welcome you to those problem-solving team meetings. And as Jen mentioned, you are a vital participant in those team meetings. Statement number 4, the terms MTSS and RTI can be used interchangeably. So if that statement is truth, please type in the chat the word truth or a T. And if it's myth, please type the word myth or an M. And when you're ready, you can press in, and just giving you a few seconds of think time. All right, and if you responded myth, absolutely. So as Jen mentioned, going over that problem-solving process, those 4 steps, RTI is the 4th step of the problem-solving process. It's not MTSS in itself. Remember, MTSS is that framework that consists of 6 components. And the last statement, all students are represented in the MTSS framework. So again, if that statement is true, please respond in the chat by typing a T or the word truth. And if it's a myth, please respond in the chat by typing the word myth or an M for truth. I'm just giving you a couple of seconds of think time. All right, and if you responded by typing truth, you are absolutely correct. All students are part of the MTSS framework. That's what makes it so impactful. It provides opportunities for all students from Tier 1 to students who are receiving Tier 3 supports. So thank you so much for those of you who participated.
This page contains resources for you as a parent, which are provided by the state of Florida. The video in this presentation gives you an additional overview of MTSS within Florida. So that is a video that you definitely can watch after this presentation. Additionally, we have attached links to the brochure, which provides questions and answers around MTSS and the problem-solving process, and it is available in several languages. So we have the links to those different languages here as well for the parent brochures.
All right, if you have any questions at this time, please feel free to unmute to share, or you can place your answers in the chat. Just a friendly reminder that today's session is being recorded, so we ask that you refrain from sharing any school-specific or student-specific information. But again, Jen and myself are happy to share, are happy to answer and respond to any questions that you have at this time. Okay, it looks like we don't have any questions. I don't see any questions in the chat. So we will move on to our closing part. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We do apologize about the technical difficulties in the beginning, so thank you for sticking through with us. We certainly appreciate it, and we look forward to engaging with you this school year. Jen?
Yes, and once again, here's our contact information. As a reminder, I'm Jennifer McSparing, Senior Administrator for K-12 MTSS and Interventions. My email address and phone number are also on this slide if you have any questions in the future. And we also have Brittany Roll. She's a program specialist and she oversees MTSS within OCPS, and her email address and phone number are on the slide as well. We look forward to hearing from you in the future, and thank you so much for joining us in today's session. Thank you again for attending today's session. We will leave the session open for a few more minutes. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. Or if you would like to unmute and ask your questions that way, we are more than happy to do so.